Welcome to the Digible Dudes podcast. I'm David, and I'm here with, I'll swap, go male first, Adam. What's up, man?
Hey, it's going good.
Yeah. And I'm also here with Megan. You'll recognize her voice by now. Megan, are you there?
I'm here.
All right. So we got our two paid media folks that are doing all these snacks with us on the line. And you guys are back with another case study, another search case study. This one's on impression share and how, well, I feel like I'm bad at trying to explain this, but we monitor impression share for clients, if I got this right. And then based on that, if someone's got a low impression share, so there's available impressions for what they want to hit out on the market, then we increased budget and we wanted to see what the outcome was. Was it worth improving our impression share? Megan, do I have that right?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
So last July, you guys did a really cool thing where you guys pulled together some automation that basically for every account that we have show, hey, here's your impression share, Mr. Customer, and here's the lost impression share that you have. Just a heads up. So for example, folks that are deep in search, they may say, I believe in having a 90% impression share. So if I want to bid on the keyword apartments for rent Dallas, I want to try to show up 9 out of 10 times when that's searched. If I had a 10% impression share, that means I'm missing 9 of the searches out of 10, right? I'm only showing up 1 out of 10 times. So some people believe in having a very high impression share. I've also met some people that believe spread the love, don't get too concentrated. I'll start with Adam. Adam, before we get into the data on this, what is your philosophy? Have you been more of the have high impression share or low?
I think maybe not to make this a cop-out answer, but I'm kind of like, if you need to have a target, cost per acquisition or ROI and wherever that is, if you can get that with 30% impression share, great. If you can get it with 10, if you can get it with 90, whatever works to hit your goal, that's what works. I don't think you need to make impression share the end-all be-all metric, but one of the things we kind of pulled together for this one was showing you what your impression share is. And then a lot of clients were like, hey, we want to increase our budget. Where can we increase our budget? So this is kind of like, hey, you could increase it on these different campaigns. You're maybe a 10% impression share, and here's how much you're spending per day. If you wanted to capture, 100% impression share, here's how much you could spend in this area in a month to, increase that impression share.
Yeah.
And there's a couple ways. Sorry.
Well, I was just going to. Well, here I'm going to step on top of you. The ones I've heard that want really high impression share are usually they're either clients that have their ownership wants to always show up for this keyword, and so it's kind of like I think it's important, or it's companies that have a really large ego, and they're like, if someone types in winter jacket, I want North Face to always show up. And so it's almost then becoming more of a branding play more than it is a branding even on long tail searches, meaning like, oh, every time I search for jackets, North Face comes up. I got to have it. Whereas, I'm with you, Adam, on the small businesses. I don't think you have to blow out your impression share because sometimes that'll drive up your cost per impression or your cost per acquisition. But Megan, that's what your whole darn study is about. So give us, what did you see? What kind of increase, of the accounts that increased, what did you see? And was it a good thing?
Yeah, so for this case study, it ran across, I think it was 10 or 12 total properties that used this impression share analysis doc that we have and kind of increased budgets based off of availability and correlation with where there was opportunity to increase impression share. And we did see some pretty big differences across performance month over month. So, we have this broken out by different campaign types, but I would say overall, the biggest finding we had was for every 6.5% increase in impression share, occupancy rate increased 1%. So one kind of great aspect to this case study is that with these properties that we're running, we did have their availability reports. So we were able to really track in depth the performance week over week and how that correlated, if it did, with impression share.
Well, let's jump onto Adam's train of thought, because that sounds cool. Like, oh, every 6.5% increase, I get 1% increase in occupancy. Sounds good, but does that then mean it blew out my ROI or cost per lead or whatever? Did it become outsized? So do you have do you have any is that hard to like normalize here? Or do you have a sense of what that was like?
It's a little bit hard to normalize, but I will say, I think cost per lead will probably go up with this kind of strategy. I think a lot of this came from where the client was like, we need to increase. We have a lot of 2 bedrooms available. How much more can I spend in 2 bedrooms? It's like, here's how much extra you can spend in 2 bedrooms. Here's what we need to get to. So it was less of a cost per lead, kind of like, I need to get my cost per lead down. It was more of a, I'm good on 1 and 3 bedrooms. I need to get these 2 bedrooms leased up so I can get to, 90% occupancy or get over that last hurdle. So how much can I put in there and what can I expect from once I do?
That's I love how you frame that, because a lot of clients usually want ROI, right? Or like a cost per lead low. But there are times they come to you and they're like, we are trying to get this property off our books. And to do that, we need to have this thing leased up in 2 months or 3 months. Tell me what I can do to get there, right? And at that point, they kind of like say it's a blank check, get whatever done to make sure we hit our mark. And so in this case, if you've had a well-oiled campaign that's been running, and then you see that you have like 30% available impression share, you can say, well, if we ate up the last of that 30%, then basically 5x, you'd probably gain 5 points of occupancy. I'm sort of rounding my math there together, but does that sound about right, Adam?
Yep.
Cool.
That's it.
Well, Megan, what did you take away from this? Is this something? Maybe I won't seed you. When you did this, is it what you were expecting, and then what did you take away?
Yeah, I think it was more or less what I was expecting. I think impression share is a really valuable metric. It can be pretty broad, and you kind of have to do some additional analysis in terms of how you want to use it. But I think especially for saturated markets, when we're looking at non-brand campaigns, it's important to look at impression share and see how much competition there is, like how are we ranking, how are we doing with our keywords. Do we need to shift strategy? Where can we shift budget to really make the biggest difference? So I think this kind of gave one proof of concept even to just these floor plan specific campaigns. Like they really do make a difference in terms of occupancy and like getting quality leads through the door. And then I think just proving out impression share in general is a reliable metric in terms of analyzing strategy.
Yeah, when I'm looking at this data, basically, what one of my takeaways here is, a lot of times, if you think of impression share, you may think about across the entire account, but you may have a bunch of different campaigns running. As you're saying, you could have your more broad campaign, you could have your 1 bedroom, your 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom. And so when building campaigns, oftentimes you kind of you do want a lot of long tail stuff, but you also got to fill the funnel a little bit. You can't just be the last search they ever see. You kind of want to be peppered throughout their entire research journey. So you're going to have to do some more broad keywords, as well as get really finite on your keywords. And then if you're trying to really move a particular type of unit, then you can say, well, let's really amp up impression share on this particular campaign, the 3 bedrooms or 2 bedrooms or something. And then you can get an idea of how much extra spend you really need to move the needle, now kind of based on this ratio that you guys came up with. So
Totally.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, you can also, there's a lot of ways you can look at impression share. We did this on a campaign level, but you can look at it at like for a specific keyword. So if you're running a campaign and you're spending a lot on one keyword, but your impression share is super low and it's not converting, you might want to pause out of that keyword or kind of rethink strategy. And this kind of correlates back to the neighborhood keywords case study we did. Is a lot of times it's going to be really hard to have a strong impression share on apartments for rent Denver, or something where you're bidding to the broader market. But if you can more narrow your focus, then you definitely want to also focus on impression share, because it's a smaller market, you're a more qualified audience, and you really want to show up to hit that audience.
Great. Well, Adam, I'll let you have the final word, unless I see Megan just look like she's gonna blow a top if she didn't get to something. But what would you, based on this, what would you instruct your team to be doing? Because you have, I don't know, more than a dozen folks now. This doesn't, to me, out of the gate, isn't something I use across the board. But how would you instruct them to apply this?
Yeah, I think this is like a great application for when, kind of like we talked about earlier, when a client's like, where can I spend an extra $1,000? Here's what my goal, where can I spend it? And just that extra piece of information on like, hey, what are their goals? Like, where are you at with availability? Do you need more 2 bedrooms? If it's like, hey, you're 80% impression share on 2 bedrooms, we're pretty well tapped out there, but maybe you're only 20% on 1 bedroom. So it's like, let's put some money there. That's kind of where you have the most like missed opportunity. And impression share is probably one of the more complicated metrics in paid search, because there's a lot of reasons you could not show an impression. One, you could be outbidded. You could just be outranked. Someone could bid higher than you. 2, you could just hit your daily budget early in the day. So you could, in theory, increase your total impression share by pulling down bids and showing for more impressions throughout the day. You might get outranked more, but you'll less likely to hit your budget as early. But there's just that fine balance of, so there's a lot of ways to look at it, like Megan said, and it's a complicated metric, I'll say.
Well, I think those are some great pro tips for clients as they speak with their vendor. They can ask about impression share. If the vendor's touting all 95% impression share, then it gives you a few questions to ask, like, well, how's our average rank? And, why do we want that? But also the other way around, if you're only showing up 10% of the time, vendor, what's your philosophy here? Are we running out of budget? Is there a problem? But it just gives you something to work with your vendor on. When vendors in this space are managing so many campaigns at a time that sometimes it's hard for them to give all the TLC that they'd love to give on an individual like account level. And so it's good to be armed with some of those, I don't know, just something to poke the bear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of back to your point with like the 95% impression share, I would ask what your cost per click is. I mean, if it's 95% and you have a $5 cost per click, if you dropped it to $4, how much of that impression share would you really lose? If you went down to 90, but you're saving 20% cost.
Yeah.
It's an easy ROI win.
Yeah, totally. All right, Megan, I think you blew your top. Are you good? Do we have anything left from you?
No, I think we covered it all. I think I'm good.
All right. Well, guys, thanks for bringing this along. I'm learning a lot. I know you guys are about to publish like your new calendar for Q2, so I'm excited to see what you guys come up with. But thanks for keeping this up and for at least teaching me. If anybody, hopefully somebody else gets something out of it. But I appreciate it. So thanks so much.
Yeah, of course.
Thanks.
See ya.